Well, this is different.
Oh, yes.
Wow. We often like with a handsome man like
Oh, stop. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well.
You want to buckle up? It's the law.
Oh, yes. Can I bring the chair up a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can't see it. There you go. Okay.
And that's on the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
Like
so
it?
I'm even with you. Yeah.
Okay.
This is rather unique.
Yeah, it's some new trend selection.
Okay. What do you do with it then?
Run it on TV and then on YouTube and all that. Okay. So, Day, Congresswoman Madeliene Bordallo, thanks for joining me, cruising with the candidates.
Well, Day to you too.
All right, I know you're working hard, especially for the general election. And before we talk about the general, I kind of wanted to gloss over the primary election and some interesting results there. You know, traditionally, I've been told that the Democrats come out for the primary, but this primary, it seemed like it was all Republican. What are your thoughts on not just the results, but maybe the voting trends and whether or not the primary election is, as some analysts are calling it, an artificial election?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell, and I will be very frank with you. I was surprised at the outcome, but everyone that I met prior to the election said there would be low turnout. This was not the general election. So I noticed in the newspaper, I was looking at the trends from early days, and every year there's fewer people that come out for these primaries. So that didn't surprise me. You can't really blame anything. The weather was pretty good. It was rainy in the morning. But I think the young people, I don't think a lot of young people voted in the primary. That was my feeling. But I really didn't think that it would be that low, you know, 40%. And hopefully now, I think the real race is on with the general election. People come out.
So, I mean, you've been in so many elections. Have you ever lost an election?
Yes. Only one.
Okay, so
that was in 1990 when I ran for governor.
And
I won the primary, the Democratic primary, but then I was up against an incumbent. And my advice to people that are looking at elected offices, especially the governorship, it's rather difficult to unseat an incumbent. You know, it's better when the field is clear, and then you go in. So that was my problem. I was in the middle, of Governor Joe Addis.
Yeah, the Malik days.
That's right, and I lost that election, but I was the first woman to try, and it kind of opened up the doors for women, you know. Then later I was elected the first woman senator in the Guam legislature, and I was elected the first woman lieutenant governor and the first woman member of Congress.
Yeah, and you've had a storied career politically and of course personally, and I just am kind of wondering, are you at a crossroads now with the and let's just look at the black and white of the primary results with your opponent Margaret Metcalf getting more votes than you? Is that something that caused you to maybe go back to the drawing board, or do you just throw it out the window?
I never take any election for granted, and my husband taught me that. In fact, everything I learned in politics was pretty much with Ricky, and he always said, no matter what the situation is, if you're the favorite candidate, still go out there and work hard. So, well, I looked at the numbers of the gubernatorial team on the Republican side, and then I looked at the numbers of the delegate on the Republican side.
There's a bit of a disparity.
That's right. So those are people, I think, that went to the polls and just did not vote at all for the delegate, and will do so in the general election. But I was still working very hard.
Yeah, I've seen you out there waving, and is there anything you're doing different with this campaign? Because, you know, I think out there in the streets, people are saying that Margaret Metcalf might be your toughest opponent to date, which I think is saying something, because you've had a couple guys on the Republican side, you know, seeming like they were going to give you a run for the money.
Well, yes, last term I had my opposition was a veteran senator.
Yeah.
And a minority leader, to say, you know. So, well, I'm just going to continue to work hard, and I think the numbers will be pretty different in the general election. I really do. I mean, and then also the independents. They don't normally vote in a primary. You know, they kind of stay away and wait till they can cross over and choose the person they want. So, you know, I wish her well, my opponent. I have a lot of years on her. You know, I've been in public office, elected office, 38 years.
Wow.
And another 26 years of public service, you know, nonprofit organizations and that type of thing. So, and people ask me, say, well, you know, how long are you going to continue?
Yeah.
Congress is very different, and you work very hard to get where I am today. And I think if you talk to Mr. Underwood, where the other two now are deceased, but Mr. Underwood will tell you that the longer you stay, the higher you get, and you know,
The more friends you make.
You make friends. That's why I go on many of these congressional delegations. I have brought over 100 members of the United States Congress to Guam, just so they get to know what it's like. They have no idea. When I first came to Congress, some fellow in the elevator asked me, Guam, is that part of Hawaii? So I went back to my office and I told my chief of staff and everybody, we've got a big job to do. And since then, I've been promoting Guam. You know, we just concluded a Liberation Day celebration. We had 1,200 people there.
Wow.
Including leaders in Congress, and many people from Guam have come over, members of the chamber, visiting senators from here, business people. I mean, it's been great, and all we do is focus on Guam. Everything must be Chamorro culture. You know, I don't want Tahiti, or, you know, you got to show people that we have a unique culture on Guam. So we have dancers. Brought one group over from Guam. Lately we've been bringing them over from California. We have all Chamorro food. It's just great. And we have the laying of the wreath at the Arlington Cemetery first, and then we go over and have the big party.
And you know what you're describing to me. I think it all boils down to the experience that, like you said, you got to be in D.C. I mean, it's a pretty tight town, and you got to be there a few terms to even get your foot in the door. And do you think that's something that you have a leg up on with your opponent? Is that, you know, I'm just from a realist point of view. Let's say Metcalf wins the general election, she goes to D.C. I'm thinking, I mean, it's 2 years to get people to know her name. It's going to take so much time to kind of get her foot in the door and to get those handshakes and to get those meetings with people that know you a whole lot better. So do you think that it comes down to experience with this?
You're absolutely right. And, you know, here we don't think too much about seniority. I mean, we used to, I think, back in the early years, but not anymore. You just get together and you elect your officers in the legislature, and that's it. But back there, it's the time you serve. And the first 2 terms in the U.S. Congress, I had to work very hard. And when the Democrats were in the majority, I had 3 committees.
Yeah.
And I had small business, natural resources, which handles all insular affairs, and every one of my predecessors sat on that committee, and then armed services because of our bases. And now, I was chair when we were in the majority. I was chair of the subcommittee on natural resources, on oceans, fisheries, wildlife, and insular affairs. Then I changed because I had an opportunity to hold a higher position in defense. So I went over, and the most important subcommittee and the defense subcommittee and the defense committee is readiness. Readiness handles all operations and all construction. We have the largest budget. So I said, with this military buildup, I've got to be on that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of friends, and by the way, I play bipartisan. You know, in this Congress, you have to. We're the only seat. You know,
Yeah.
one seat. So I have to really work on all my friendships across the board.
Well, on both sides, Democrat and Republican.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that kind of brings me to my next question about the build-up. And before we get to that, just this case that's ongoing with the territories, and we've had the Obama administration come out and say that in so many words, Guam and the citizens of the territories are second-class citizens. With that being said, do you think that your closeness with President Obama might be rubbing some of the Guam voters the wrong way?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's, you know, of course, I've never really heard that from him. In fact, it was President Obama that said that now, with all the doings around the world and all these uprisings and so forth, and today we had another beheading of a U.S. journalist. He said we should pivot our attention now to the Asia-Pacific area. And so we're pouring a lot of money into that. So by saying something like second class, I would never, ever, if anything like that he said in front of me, I'd surely, you know.
And I think that maybe people are muddying the water, and
right.
It's kind of being attributed to Obama, but maybe more so to his legal team and the stance they've taken in this pretty important
Every
lawsuit.
president has taken hits. I came in when President Bush was there. He was being hit left and right.
Yeah.
Now we've got Obama there. He's being, I mean, you can never please everybody in Congress. 541 members of the United States Congress, try to get them to work together, to agree on anything.
Yeah.
So, no, I think the president is doing the best he can. I don't know, I would never want to be in a position like that, to be able to try to conduct, everywhere you look, every direction around the globe, there's protests and uprisings and killings and conflicts. It's just absolutely unbelievable.
So Obama's got to make his constituents and his people happy. With Congresswoman Madeliene Bordallo, after all these years, so many years in public service, as of today, who are you trying to make happy? Who are you trying to please?
In my work?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do everything I can for Guam. Absolutely, for Guam, for the people of Guam, everybody. And right now I have 3 important projects in Congress. Of course, I have the war claims, and I've gotten that through the House 5 times. A lot of people say, what has she done? She hasn't gotten it through.
And they do, and that's kind of been the big 800-pound gorilla, is that the war reparations.
My predecessors weren't able to do it. I've gotten it further than all of them. Even one of my predecessors will admit it. 5 times it's gone through the House. Then we have to go over to the Senate. They never concur for one reason or another. The last time I went to the Senate, they said it has to have an offset, meaning where's the money for this? So we came back, we just introduced another bill in Congress with the monies of these are the Marines that will be coming in, will get Section 30 monies. And we've said that money we can use, because that's unexpected money.
Yeah.
That's not the regular Section 30 monies that have been coming to Guam. Yeah, and so we've designated that, and we brought it back. You know, we talked with the members of the legislature here and the governor, and I haven't given up on that. You know, I just went to a book signing, a book called, with pictures of the survivors there. I know there aren't many left, and but from what I've heard, I never went through the war. I came in 1948 to Guam. I saw the disaster here, you know, what was left, the remnants of after the war. And my husband would tell me his story. He was 17 years old and went through terrible things here. So I just think about that all the time, and it's so unfair. So I am just going to keep right on going. But for anybody to say I haven't done anything in the last 12 years is a misconception, to say the least. Now the other one is the military buildup. Being on the Readiness Subcommittee has helped tremendously. In the new NDAA budget, Guam has a sizable amount of money, you know, to be used on the base, outside the base, infrastructure, and it's going to be over in the Senate now. Hopefully, we cross our fingers that they go along with it. See, and then once the Senate comes out with their version, then we go into conference, and I'll be on that conference committee. So it's very important that I stay on this. Now, I did get the missile defense program, the THAAD. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
That was my doing because I had calls from my constituents that said, do you think we should move from Guam? I said, what? Well, with all the threats from North Korea, they felt uncomfortable. So I went to see Secretary Panetta and spoke to him about it, and I said, you know, Guam is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we can't flee anywhere. We don't have close neighbors or
no freeways.
So, that's right.
Yeah.
So they were developing this this missile defense program in Texas. There's only two, the one in Texas and the one here, and they're thinking of developing it in many, I think even in Europe and other countries and maybe even throughout the United States. But we have the THAAD group here now out at Northwest Field, and it makes me feel very comfortable.
And with the build-up, I think it is a matter of comfort and security. And my way of thinking on the build-up is that, you know, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Uncle Sam says, hey, we need more troops, we need this, we need that. I mean, it's going to happen, and, you know, feathers are going to be ruffled, and you've ruffled a few feathers.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? With the case of Retidian, does it ever reach a point where you just want to say, I mean, grab people by the lapels and say, hey, look, you know, I mean, we need this, and you continue to protest, and you end up we end up getting the short end of the stick instead of getting something meaningful from Uncle Sam.
It does become frustrating. I will tell you, it does. But I've been at it for 12 years now. Ever since I started, there was talk of the build-up, and then we had, you know, different groups, and I see the challenges. People say, well, we want the build-up, but only if it's good for Guam. Well, I certainly couldn't agree more. But I think that we work things out, and then we look at the percentages. We've taken polls. There's about 80% of the people of Guam that are very supportive of this build-up.
Yeah.
And the governor has worked very closely with me on this.
And you've worked very closely with the governor.
That's right. And that, you know, that's very important in Washington. If you don't have the governor's support, the legislative support, the people's support, nobody will ever entertain you with anything in Washington. It's the first thing that they ask. Is the island in support of this? So it's important. And no matter what the politics is, whether you're working Democrat to Democrat or Republican to Democrat, you've got to work with the leadership on it.
I think it's kind of ironic because back when we had a Democrat congressman and a Democrat governor, it seemed like they were less likely to work together than as we do now, where we've got a Democrat congresswoman and a Republican governor. It seems like you guys get along very well, and you put, you know, one face forward on a lot of these issues.
Well, yes, and my late husband worked both with a Democrat-controlled legislature and a Republican-controlled legislature, and he said he sort of had problems with both. I mean, you know, you can't always convince at the time it was 21, you can't always convince them that your ideas are good, or that your bill is good, or that you should vote for or sign this bill or that bill. It's hard, you know. But I'm persistent. That's what they call me in the U.S. Congress. Here she comes.
Little Mrs. Persistent.
Here she comes. She wants something for Guam, and that my whole being, you know, there. I just I've always, even before I got into Congress, I was very supportive of beautification projects on our island, culture. Many of my bills in the legislature had to do with the culture of Guam. So, you know, I grew up here. It's my home.
It's also an interesting issue that you grew up here. It's your home, and whereas we have a Metcalf who spent a lot of her life off island, and now she's making the step back to Guam to try and be involved with the process. And, you know, there are people out there who say, oh, where have you been, you know, the last, 10, 20 years? Do you think that because you've been here and in DC representing Guam, that maybe you have a better understanding of the issues that affect us?
Well, I would think I should have. Yes, I do. I think that it takes living here for many years. I've been on Guam since 1948, never left until I went to live part-time in Washington. But of course I still vote, I have a home here, and so forth. But no, it takes continuous living, and you know, that's very important. I contest
Yeah.
between the two.
So
of
you're
us.
saying Frank Blas Jr. is a more legitimate candidate
Well,
than
yes, I
Margaret
thought,
Metcalf?
certainly he knew the issues, and he's running again in the Senate, and he was a leader. He was a minority leader. So let me tell you this. The residency requirement to run for governor, lieutenant governor, and a member of the legislature is 5 years. The residency requirement for my job is 30 days. That's why you get people that, just
Come in and set up shop.
That's right, yeah. And I think that should be changed. I really do.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, it's, it's something, this is a very, very important position for Guam.
Yeah.
And I do feel that you should have the experience behind you.
And that's a point I'll bring up when I interview your opponent. Very interesting points there. I think in closing, this, I don't want to jinx anything, but this could be your last election too. I mean, I know that you want to go out in November a winner, but win or lose, what are your plans after the general election?
Let me explain this to you. In Congress, it's not really a very youthful club. In fact, we have a member in his mid-90s, a couple of members now, one from Texas and one from Detroit, I think. But the longer, most of my colleagues have got varied backgrounds. They've been members of their state legislatures for a long time. Many are lawyers. Some are judges, retired, teachers. We've got everything, a mixed bag. But there's far more older people, and the reason that they're there is because the longer they stay in Congress, the higher their experience, their positions become. When they become a chairman of the rules, or the chairman of commerce, or any of those exclusive committees, people keep them there.
Yeah.
Because they can get a lot for their state.
Yeah, and I definitely see your point, especially with Guam having a non-voting delegate. It does seem like you have to be in there a long time to foster those relationships
before you can get anything done. Now, I've been blessed with good health, and I think that's very important.
Yeah.
And I want to get some of these things, finished.
Yeah.
I also want to say, besides the visa waiver, the war claims, and the military buildup, I'm very interested in veterans. I instituted, when I first came in, a local veterans council. They meet. For the last 12 years, they've been meeting. And they bring to me all the issues of the veterans.
Yeah, this is definitely a hot button issue. The
That's
veterans
right.
and their benefits
and it's a hot button issue back there too. So that's important. Once it's a hot button issue there, it becomes one for Guam. And but I enjoy my job. It's a challenge, but I enjoy it. There are some hardships. The traveling is pretty difficult sometimes. It's a long trip.
Perennial jet lag.
That's right.
I've heard it described.
But
Congresswoman, going back to this point, with having to be in D.C. a long time to foster those relationships, what do you say to those people out there who say, okay, Madeliene's had her shot. She's been in there how many terms? Let's try someone new. How do you counter that argument? Where on the one hand, yes, you got to have experience, but how much time do you give that person to get things done? And do you think that you still need more time?
I'll be very frank with you. A new person would have to go to the bottom of the line, and have to start. And it's a long haul. It really is. Anybody, not just Guam, but even the states. And there's no such thing as priorities. If you were, say, a member of a committee, and then you decided you want to change a committee, and then you decide you want to come back to that original committee, you go to the bottom. And I've seen people argue the point. Well, I sat here for years. Well, it doesn't make any difference. Our rules are, you're a junior, you start as a junior. So, what was the second part of your question?
How long do you give as a voter, or just as the people of Guam?
Well, it depends on the people of Guam if they no longer want me. But as long as I have important issues that I feel are important, I hate to step aside and lose all that, momentum that I had going. So, but naturally, it's up to the people of Guam.
Yeah.
And as long as I've got good health and I can move and help the people, and incidentally, I'll tell you a couple of things about my office. I have a great staff, both in D.C. and over here in Guam. And that's all I hear when I go out. I love your staff. Emails, we answer our emails in one day. Absolute top order. And if it's an intricate matter, then we'll give them 2-3 days. We tell them we received your email, but take us a few days to get back
to marinate on it.
We do it, yes. And I've been blessed for the last 4 years to have a military fellow. I don't pay for that, the military does. So these commanders or majors or whatever they might be sit in my office every day for 1 year, and they handle all of the protocol of the military people. And knowing Guam, we have so many instances where somebody's mother died, he's located over in the war zone maybe and wants to be, fly out here right away for the funeral. Those kind of things they help. Military protocol is different than civilian protocol. It takes somebody that's in the know.
Yeah.
And that's important. This year I had so many interns, and I want to point out, we have 6 interns, and then we overlap for that big liberation celebration because they do all the logistics and all. And they come from, I have Republicans in there, Democrat, I have everybody, anybody that wants to come for the summer and they're in college, they've got the job.
And in this interview, I've noticed that you've answered your war reparations haters, to put it, in one way. You've commended your staff, and it kind of seems to me, because I've talked to you time and time again over the years, it kind of seems to me that we're seeing a fired up Madeliene Bordallo.
That's right.
Would you say that you're fired up for this general?
Always fired up. I'm telling you, they call me Miss Guam. Here she comes. She wants something more, and I normally get my way.
There you go. So, well, good luck, Congresswoman, and we'll see if you get your way this general election.
Thank you, and thank you for the interview. And I remember you at a senior citizens.
Oh, all the time.
Many years ago, and you were so funny.
Singing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not very funny today.
No, put on my serious hat.
You're very serious, yeah. I expected to be, I've been on the Colbert Show.
Yeah.
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 Brought to you by Triple J, celebrating 30 years of putting our customers first.